Hi, Taras Pluskin here at the Top Shelf Aquatics farm. The second most commonly asked question we have here, besides what's the deal with all the blue light, and we'll get to that in a future video, is wow, these tanks have so much flow going on. These tanks, they have flow going from that way, this way, that way, every direction possible. Now, why are our tanks so immensely dominated by dynamic flow, having water moving in every direction, seemingly randomly throughout our facility? Well, it's because flow is probably one of the most important aspects of reef aquarium keeping. One that contextualizes water chemistry, contextualizes the distribution of light throughout the water column, and one which allows various organisms to either thrive or creates an environment where they don't do so well. So, the tank behind me, one of the wonderful tanks of our Sherwood production system here. Look what happens when I take a single piece of nori and place it into this tank, seemingly in one of the areas that's not directly affected by flow. It is affected by so many different aspects of flow, both biological and abiological. It is being torn from the pumps itself, the power heads. It's being ripped around by the tangs, and the flow from all these factors are being manipulated around the coral itself. Flow is everywhere in the aquarium, and to ignore it is to fail, but to understand it and to strive to deploy it purposefully is the means that a conscientious aquarist can have to assuring success in the aquarium. So what is all this flow doing in the aquarium? Why do we have so many power heads running on this Sherwood system that a rock at the bottom is literally shaking with the power of this movement of water? Well, there's two major things that flow does in the aquarium. The first major thing that it does is it gets the crap off. If we just had this system run stagnant without all this flow all the time, eventually there would be areas where detritus, solids, and other things would settle down on corals. And because we grow photosynthetic organisms, we cannot have that. Corals cannot become smothered with a bunch of sediment. They will become shaded, they'll die, they won't do so well. It's very important, especially with high flow corals, high flow fish, that we simulate that massive movement that comes in their natural environment, the moving of the tides, the massive movement of water. So what else is coming in? The waste and all of those solids is getting taken away by the tide, but what is coming in that new water, that new tide in the wild? Why it's plankton, fish eggs, krill, copepods, phytoplankton, a whole myriad of biological and abiological nutrients and necessary components come in with the tide. A coral not only enjoys having all of its surplus waste removed from the exiting tide, but the new tide comes in with food, alkalinity, new magnesium, new calcium supplies. So by these means as well, water and flow dictate a flow of resources as well as an export of potentially toxic wastes. So the other major thing that flow does in the aquarium, it is the communication of the aquarium. The flow, the pumps that drive the flow are the heart, the beating heart of our aquarium. And it drives the water from the eyes and the beautiful face of the aquarium through the various lungs, like the refugium, and the liver and the other filtration apparatuses. It pumps water through the carbon that purifies the water. It pumps water through the UV that sterilizes things that might be growing in the water column. It pumps through the solids filtration. All these things, flow is what contextualizes the communication of water throughout the aquarium and the whole system, achieving the balance that we need to keep some of the awesome and impressive organisms that we farm here at TSA alive. So, with that in mind, we have to acknowledge that each organism, each fish, each hermit crab, each urchin, and especially every coral is designed within the context of the flow that it intends to master. Acroporas, look at them. They have existed to dominate in open flow. It doesn't matter if the tide surges. They have rocky, hard skeletons. They stay firm in the tide. they branch off, they ascertain as much light and consume as much flow as possible. Compare them to a discosoma mushroom, one that protrudes on the bottom and waits for solids and other food items to settle. By understanding the different needs of all these organisms and what flow levels they are designed to need in the wild, we can achieve success, but only through understanding what flow we need, what critters that we want, and what means that we have via power heads, pumps, aerators, and other means to circulate water and purposefully use flow to remove waste, achieve the stability, and thrive, make all of our organisms thrive that we want. So this will be a brief introduction to a series we'll be doing here on the TSA channel that will be discussing all these things in more detail, how flow affects various fishes, of course various corals, how we can deploy flow, and the various kinds of flow that we have in the aquarium. So I'm very excited to introduce this series, and we will see you in part 2.